Good afternoon, everyone. I want to take this moment to show off my nerdy shirt. Here we go. There it is. That's a reference to one of my husband's and my favorite works of literature. So, I am the Imelda Marcos of nerd shirts. I always grab more than my drawers can hold. And if you caught that reference, you're probably Generation X too. I promised you with my last blog, in which I took a detour into politics, that the next time I talk to you, it would be about something that I like. And I'm going to keep that promise. Last weekend, I partook of a couple of tasty morsels of popular culture. And interestingly enough, they're both French, although in terms of their content, they couldn't be much more different. So last weekend was my husband's and my 17th wedding anniversary. And so, as part of our celebration, we went to the movies to see Jane Austen Wrecked My Life. Now, this movie played for 1 week at the multiplex near us. It is still playing at the Terra Theater in Atlanta, but this is the kind of movie that does deserve our support. First of all, because it is a good movie. It's not my favorite movie of 2025. That title still goes to Ryan Coogler's Sinners, but Sinners doesn't need my help. Jane Austen Wrecked My Life does, because it's the kind of movie that people complain isn't getting made anymore. It is a mid-budget romantic comedy made for grown-ups. You can't go to this movie and switch off your brain at the door. You have to pay attention to it. You have to think about it. And it features characters who feel like, at least to me, feel like real people. They have lived in lives. I won't say messy lives because that may imply too much dysfunction. But yeah, there's a little bit of mess here and there. But there's also a lot of affection. And there's some trauma, some trouble. But they aren't squeaky, glossy, shiny, the kind of protagonists that you'd see if the movie were an American romantic comedy. These people are a little bit messier than that. So I appreciated those aspects of the film. And of course, obviously the title indicates that there will be references to literature. And the main character, her name is Agathe. Here in the US we would say Agatha, but it's so much prettier in French, Agathe. And she is a bookstore owner and reader and aspiring novelist. So right away, I'm clicking with her. Right away, I'm interested to see where her story is going to go. Well, it turns out that although you do have the romantic plot, and it is very important, as we see, first of all, she gets involved in a tentative romantic relationship with a man who's been her best friend for years. But there's a new guy at this writer's retreat in England that she's a little intrigued by. In typical Jane Austen fashion, they don't hit it off right away. They misunderstand one another. And by the end of the film, I don't think I'm spoiling too much because, well, one thing about romantic comedies is that they do tend to be pretty predictable. We know in advance, before we even buy our tickets, that these two people are going to end up together. The fun is in how that happens. So, although you do have the romantic plot taking up, I would say, 2/3 of the energy in the film, and it is a nicely acted and well crafted romantic plot, but the story is almost as much about Agathe finding her voice as a writer. And as someone who has on more than one occasion struggled with writer's block or struggled with dissatisfaction with a project I'm working on, why the heck am I working on this? Nobody's going to want to read it, nobody's going to like it. It's not going to come to mean anything to anybody besides just me. Again, I could majorly identify. And there was a lot of satisfaction in seeing the story unfold. So, I recommend it. My only problem with it was that it should have been a little bit longer. I would have been happy if it had been a 3-hour miniseries on BritBox, because we were introduced to minor characters who could have had arcs of their own. We saw little of them, enough for us to be interested in them. But the arcs couldn't develop because of the time constraints. It should have been, my husband said it should have been about 15 minutes longer. Again, I think a 3-part miniseries could have, a 3-part 1 hour each miniseries could have developed the characters in a little bit more detail. Now, the other thing that we watched last week is on Netflix. So if you've got a Netflix account, you have access to this. And while I mentioned that Jane Austen Wrecked My Life was a comedy, a romantic comedy aimed at grown-ups, it doesn't talk down to its audience, it assumes some maturity on the part of its audience. The next one I want to tell you about is actually an all ages, made for general audiences type of animated miniseries. And it's called Asterix and Obelix, The Big Fight. Now, my husband, because he has some extended family in France and in Monaco, he grew up a little bit with Asterix, and I did not. And so I was watching that. He was the one who wanted to see it. He introduced me to it. And as I was watching, I did not expect to be as charmed by this little miniseries as I ended up being. So for those of you who, like me, are not really initiated into the world of Asterix the Gaul, he and his best buddy Obelix, he's a tiny guy, Obelix is a huge guy, and they live in the one village in the year 50 BC, the one village that has not been conquered by Rome. And the reason why they are able to stay free while the rest of Gaul has fallen to the Romans is because they have access to a magic potion that gives them super strength, so that every time the Romans try to attack them, this tiny band of Gauls manages to beat them back with their super strength. So in this particular 5-part miniseries, yeah, I think it's 5 parts, but in this miniseries, Julius Caesar is trying to solve the problem of this one contentious village. And they decide, he and his Romans, in particular the niece of one of his generals, a girl named Metadata, she comes up with the idea to have the chief of this village, by the way, his name is Vital Statistics. That's his name, Vital Statistics. And if you found that amusing, there are plenty of punny names where that came from. So she has this idea, perhaps because she is fascinated by Gaulish culture and doesn't want to see a lot of death and destruction, and decides to tell Caesar about this tradition by which if you have 2 Gaulish chiefs fight, the winner of the fight, if they take on each other in single combat, the winner of the fight will take over both villages, will be the chief of both villages. So all they need to do is find a Gaulish chief who's in Rome's back pocket and see to it that he wins, and then the village will essentially become part of Rome. So, in order to do this, they have to make sure that the village druid, cannot mix the magic potion, and complications ensue. And it seems very silly, and it is, but there is such charm about it, and such humor, and really a lot of warmth to it. So it's tons of fun, and if you don't know who Asterix and Obelix are, this little miniseries tells their origin stories. So it's a good entry point if you've never seen anything about these characters. So I recommend these two bits of popular culture. They're both a lot of fun, and as you can see, very different. So what's coming up next? Well, I still want to tell you more about some female fantasy authors you may not have heard of, but I'm also going to begin a project of series of blogs that discusses 1930s cinema. I did some preliminary research and discovered that I have seen a total of 244 films made between the year 1930 and 1939. So there is so much more where that came from. I know I could explore far more in the decade. So if when I am talking about the 1930s I don't mention your favorite film, it's probably just because I haven't seen it yet. So till then, good luck and thank you.